Okay. And I'm gonna I'll keep an eye on the attendees to see if there's anyone else we need to promote to panelists. For some reason, I've registered you all of the task force members as panelists already through Zoom, but I don't know why it's not putting you through immediately. So I apologize if there's a slight delay. We will now begin this meeting of the Sustainable Economy Task Force at 2:03 p.m. on Thursday, September 26th, 2024. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the agenda. Okay, here's that. Can everyone see? Okay, so we will begin with a roll call, and we'll start with GSD.
Hello, this is Dennis Romero with GSD.
Thank you, Dennis. EDD is me. Do we have MNerd?
Yep, Sammy Chow here with MNerd.
Hi, Sammy. Do we have DWS?
Hi, everyone. This is Veronica Alonso. I am here as a proxy for Raquel Gomez.
Thank you so much for being here. Tax and Rev?
Good afternoon, Lucinda Cito here for Tax and Rev.
Excellent. PED? Okay, and I'll check the waiting room in a second after I go through this list. Advisory Council Chair Poviwa.
Chair James Poviwa here present.
Okay. IAD? And Michael had RSVP'd yes, so I'll check again in a second. NMED? State Investment Council?
Hi, Charles Woolman, and I think Francesca Moratti is here as well.
Thank
Here
you
as
both
well.
for being here. Yes, thank you for both being here at the same time too. DFA? State Lands? And HED? Okay. Well, that is quorum. So we can begin. That completes our roll call. Again, I'll check in a second who else is here if I missed anyone after I stop sharing this. But for now, our first item of business will be to approve this agenda. And this has been circulated in advance. It's pretty simple. Is there a motion to approve this agenda?
Hey, Chair, it's James Poviwa.
Yeah.
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Oh, and sorry, Crystal, for your purposes, that was Sammy who seconded, I believe, from MNerd.
Yes.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now we will go to approval of minutes from the 29th of August. Can you see these minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And as a reminder, this was our meeting on revenue. So we had presentations from lots of wonderful state agency and SIC counterparts. And then we had a discussion. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
I move to approve the minutes, James.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second. This is Sammy with MNerd.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. We've approved these minutes. All right, and now we're going to move on to a discussion of advisory council recommendations for EDD's state plan and for the task force itself as they consider elements relevant to this plan. I believe we may have one more in the attendees. Breezy, I see you. I'm just going to move you over. So Crystal, we can mark Breezy Gutierrez as present today. Let's see if it lets us move you over. All right, there we go. Okay. So like I said, we're going to be discussing recommendations from the Advisory Council for the task force and EDD for this year's update to the statewide plan. And hi, Breezy. So this year we did end up having a special meeting of the Advisory Council. And so I do have some sort of outcomes from that meeting that I can present to you. James, I don't know if you want to briefly say a little bit about how we consolidated those recommendations for the Advisory Council and how they can essentially be found in one document, which you and I compiled to summarize our understanding of what the Advisory Council members had expressed interest in, what they then voted on. So I will turn it over to you to give some context on that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to do so. You know, over the last few years, we've hosted numerous meetings, and just this last year have done a pretty good job of hosting our SEEK meetings in communities around the state. And we've taken previous iterations of the state plan sector by sector and received presentations in the communities that we've visited. Council members have had the opportunity of reviewing each of the sectors, and Kayla and her team have done an amazing job of briefing each one of those sectors, providing briefings prior to each one of those meetings. So at the meetings, we've been able to think through and digest different portions of the plan, and both through various means of comments, council members have provided their feedback. Most of that has primarily happened in our monthly meetings. I'm excited about what the council voted to approve. I know that Kayla is going to be going through an overview of what that plan looked like, but as she mentioned, she and I put together a memo that was circulated in June, and it's also on the Economic Development Department's website. So hope that you all have taken a look at it. If not, it's available online.
Great, thank you. So now I will share my screen with that. And for the purposes of task force members, just know that I believe this has been circulated to you via email a couple of times. So it's been a few months since we actually put this on the website. And then it was after that fact that the Advisory Council actually did vote to endorse what was contained in that memo, because it was an exercise of observing those conversations, understanding what the interests were, and then reflecting that back in a memo to say, you know, is this accurate? Does it capture what you've been conveying to us? So with that in mind, I will go ahead and see if I can get this up for you. And here it is. Wonder if well, that's okay. So this memo is entitled Taking Stock of New Mexico's Sustainable Economy Advisory Council and Task Force. It summarizes a bit of history about these bodies themselves and the legislative mandate that they are connected to. It also captures recent developments in light of added staff capacity at the department in the form of me and the team that we've been able to put together here. And there are some points around process that the advisory council did vote to endorse. They endorsed the whole memo. So that's important to know. Some of these points are around process of how the plan is created and presented. So the first was shortening and prioritizing the plan, making it more accessible by making it a less lengthy document, and also establishing priorities among the expressed areas of interest. Ensuring embedded and extended stakeholder engagement, which I would describe as meaning that we need folks who are involved throughout the process of, asking for feedback, taking into account that feedback, drafting updates to the plan, and then participating in implementation so that we don't drop the ball when we're handing this from stakeholder to stakeholder. Community and tribal engagement were seen as taking on an important role, and we've taken steps to respond to that in recent months. It's slow moving, but we are excited about the tribal economic development focus groups as a supplement to consultation that we have introduced as an option in this process. And then finally, the capacity needs of these bodies in the state plan process, which we're only sort of able to get fully underway in terms of a cohesive unit after we gained dedicated staff capacity. And then we captured themes that have been discussed in the council. So we mention here that there's a distinct moment of unprecedented opportunities for federal funding, and that responding to that, particularly the advisory council members are interested in those opportunities pertaining to renewable energy and infrastructure, and specifically opportunities that increase access to those critical types of infrastructure, economic diversification, and further elaboration of what that means within the plan and the state's economic development strategies. Discussion of communities that are really impacted by transition and by extractive industries, reliance on those industries, because the past plans have not necessarily been focused on that. That was another recommendation that the council endorsed. And then special attention to the social inequities that underlie issues around economic transition. And so a lot of our members who come from tribal communities were interested in more dedicated conversation on topics such as grid interconnection and permitting, but specifically for tribal communities, as that issue differs substantially in terms of the challenges that they face. Another item was workforce development, and the language in SB 112 is not necessarily the most specific language one could hope for, but it does mention not only the clean energy workforce study conducted by University of New Mexico, but it also calls out, well-paid family sustaining jobs in industries outside of the extractive economy. And so that is something that the Advisory Council has echoed here, with a particular interest in supporting workforce opportunities in the trades, manufacturing, infrastructure, renewable energy, healthcare, and other fields. And finally, there was a recommendation around community-led economic development, as opposed to, larger companies or enterprises requiring support, an interest from the Advisory Council and some opportunities for grassroots type organizations, community-focused organizations that might need help with simple things like capacity building, but the opportunity for the community to be more of a stakeholder in the types of project development that the state does, with special focus on equity principles. And then the rest of the memo does just talk about where this work stands, where it's going, moving forward. And in addition to that, I will pull up minutes from our, I guess the agenda includes it as well, from our special meeting, because there were some additional recommendations from Chair Poviwa, which are here visible on the screen, I believe. And so James, if you would like to just briefly discuss, I guess we don't have to go item by item, but if you want to, state what the general intention of these was.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chair. And I think that the mandate of the task force and the advisory council is large. The goal being to chart a path forward to ensure that our state transitions to a sustainable economic model. And that can't be done without resources. I know that each one of our state agencies could use additional capacity no matter what. And in this case, the Economic Development Department is serving as the lead on the task force and the advisory council. So one of the main things is, in addition to some of the things that are charted out here, are creating an office that is dedicated to supporting this work and also ensuring that there are resources, including funding, to staff that office. I think that's the highest level recommendation that I added and was approved by the council. I'll also say that after the council voted to support these recommendations, we sent our recommendations to the acting secretary of Economic Development Department. And I'm also very thrilled that Secretary Black is now in position, and noting that Secretary Black also has been a key member of the advisory council, and it's been a pleasure to be able to work with him. And he also was present at this meeting where we all voted unanimously to support the recommendations.
Great, thank you so much for that summary. So that is the nature of the recommendations, and I will say as well, we've had different types of meetings in the advisory council and the task force recently, and I can recognize we've learned things from this process. Maybe we will do it differently next year. The task force meetings were really kind of high-level topics that we had distilled down as being of importance for this next update to the plan. And most of these are very closely aligned with priorities that our new Secretary Black has already articulated, including in his remarks today at the Governor's Economic Development Conference. But so, for example, we had meetings in the task force about topics such as infrastructure access as an impediment to economic development, especially for rural and tribal communities. And that is one of the Secretary's primary areas of interest. And I know he's particularly interested in conversations around things like site readiness. So it's really exciting. We had already kind of had a plan draft prepared, and upon his arrival, it is very clear that what we worked on is aligned with his areas of interest. So that's always great to hear when you get new leadership. We also had incredible conversations about things like revenue diversification and fiscal resilience. And so I'm excited that we've tackled new topics here in the task force. I'm super grateful to my agency counterparts for going on that journey with me, and to the advisory council for adapting to a new structure that perhaps we will iterate upon next year. But grateful that we could distill down some of these recommendations from the council for the task force. So maybe at this point, we'll keep it brief today, but could I please hear from any task force members who have questions or comments about the content of those recommendations or anything on this process in general? Well, seeing none, can I maybe ask of the task force, how did you feel about this process as opposed to previous years? What can we do better? What are you interested in discussing in the future? Maybe just some comments on that process piece would be helpful to us as we continue to build this out. Dennis.
Yeah, so this was my first time doing this, so I can't really compare it to any other year. But I know what, from my perspective, might help is a list of 1 or 2 focus areas, perhaps thrown out by the governor or the legislature or your secretary, and just saying, I'd like you to focus on these 1 to 3 items and kind of do some brainstorming. And it kind of sounds like that this is what it morphed into. And I don't know if that was a mandate that came down and that's what guided this along, or if this is just kind of what developed. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Lucinda.
I'll just say, as someone who has been participating through this whole process this last year, it was better in terms of engaging. And I'll speak only for myself. It was much better engagement for me and my department, and that just helped me feel like we were a better contributor to the process. So that's where I really appreciate that improvement of engagement.
Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts? Yep.
Yeah, from where I sit as chair of the advisory council, has been a very heavy lift, especially for economic development department to host these meetings in communities around the state. Where I've seen them to be the most successful is when we've been able to engage with various agencies in these particular regions. It's been amazing to have, I will just commend DWS in particular for attending so many of the council meetings in communities around the state. But that said, I think it has been challenging for advisory council members to make these meetings in person, given that we are all volunteer members of the council.
Yep, that makes total sense. And we are, James knows this, but we're working on some possible solutions on that front. We do recognize that the advisory council is a volunteer body, and so that can make some of our capacity issues particularly pressing. And I will take this opportunity as well before we open it up to public comment to just let you guys know about some exciting updates. I myself have had capacity issues just by virtue of being the only internal staff member of the Economic Development Department leading this work. But to respond to that need, we've been creative and we are excited to be working with several institutional partners to create fellowships, policy fellowships, with EDD to meet our particular need for dedicated research support. And so not only are we extremely grateful to have had Thomas Silva with us since March from Cornell Law School, but we also recently had a summer fellow from the Harvard Taubman Center for State and Local Governance. His name is Juan Carlos. And then most recently, the Harvard Growth Lab applied to an RFP hosted by the Bezos Earth Fund and Resources for Future through a program called their Resilient Energy Economies Initiative. And they were successful in that. It's a modest amount, but it was enough to get a year-long full-time placement with my program. And the Growth Lab really offers a range of analytical tools for things like complexity analysis and growth diagnostics to figure out some options moving forward for statewide economic diversification and resilience, but also sub-state kind of regional economic and workforce development issues. So we're excited about that. And then last but not least, we are hopeful that soon we will have a new inaugural fellowship in partnership with New Mexico State University, funded philanthropically. More details on that soon, but we're excited to hire talent from within the state through external funding to create a research partnership with my program. And of course, this does not negate, what I've experienced as a real capacity problem. It would be very convenient if we had more dedicated resources here, but we're also making do with what we've got, and I think doing so quite well. So excited to harness the tools and talents of not just the fellows that we have the privilege to work with over the coming year, but also the institutions which with they are affiliated. Yeah, and so I think now, since I didn't see any additional comments from our task force, I will see if we have any public comment here. And of course, if I missed someone from the task force, feel free to raise your hand as well. Anyone who would like to chime in for public comment is welcome. Okay. I don't see a task force hand, but I see Somos un Pueblo Unido in the attendees, and I see Felix. And it should, I just clicked allow to talk, so hopefully that. And I also clicked for Somos as well.
Buenas tardes, ¿me escuchan?
Yes.
Buenas tardes, somos un pueblo unido organiza a trabajadores con salarios bajos y familias inmigrantes en todo Nuevo México para abogar por las políticas que crecen oportunidades económicas para las comunidades de bajos ingresos y los trabajadores de primera línea en el petróleo, el gas y la cuenca pérmica. Somos presentó recomendaciones para el Plan Estratégico Estatal de Nuevo México, Empower en colaboradores basados en años de trabajo de desarrollo de la fuerza laboral y conocimientos de un informe del 2024 del Centro de Política Social de la Universidad de Nuevo México sobre la fuerza laboral del petróleo y gas del sureste, en la que colaboramos. Estos conocimientos se basaron en diálogos comunitarios con miembros de varios condados y colaboración con juntas laborales regionales, agencias estatales y proveedores de capacitación.
Hi, this is Felix with Somos. So, based off of what Gladys said, I'm going to start by sharing just our general recommendations for the 2023 strategic plan update. The current demographic data does not adequately reflect the role of immigrants in New Mexico's economy, especially in critical sectors like healthcare, childcare, construction, and oil and gas. We recommend broadening the demographic profile to include all immigrant workers and address the unique challenges faced by undocumented workers, such as limited to access unemployment benefits, tuition assistance for community college certification programs, and WIOA funding programs. The current plan lacks a clear definition of the challenges and strategies to engage disadvantaged worker groups, including immigrants, rural residents, women, formerly incarcerated individuals, low-wage workers, and adults with low literacy or no high school diploma. We need to enhance partnership among state agencies, community colleges, unions, training providers, worker organizations, and regional workforce boards to develop targeted short-term training and support services tailored to these groups. New Mexico's Permian Basin will face significant impacts from the transition away from oil and gas. Southeastern New Mexico is grouped with other rural areas lacking specific strategies for regional workforce and economic challenges. A dedicated section on the Permian Basin should outline workforce development and economic opportunities in emerging sectors like renewable energy, climate resilience, and other growth industries. Diversification into new industries requires coordinated efforts among EDD, DWS, and HED. Strategic planning should align with DWS priority sectors, including broadband expansion and early childhood education. Lastly, we need to prioritize local workforce development in new projects. Many jobs from state and federal funded initiatives are filled by out-of-state workers, leaving rural communities behind. Strategies should focus on enhancing local training and employment in emerging industries, especially in disadvantaged areas.
Puedo continuar yo también. Hallazgos y recomendaciones para el desarrollo de la fuerza laboral. Vimos que el financiamiento de WIOA fluctúa según la asignación del Congreso, es altamente restrictivo, incluye a muchos trabajadores, difícil de alcanzar y carecen de suficientes apoyos para servicios integrales y capacitación, como ya mencionaba mi compañero. Existen otras barreras para que los trabajadores desatendidos accedan a las capacitaciones y empleos de mayor calidad de nuestras, y una de nuestras recomendaciones que incluimos fue que asignar los fondos estatales a las juntas regionales de la fuerza laboral y la división de educación para adultos de la HED para ampliar la elegibilidad, apoyando a trabajadores desatendidos y fomentar programas de capacitación innovadores. Y una de las barreras que vimos ahí es el financiamiento federal de WIOA, que ya hemos hablado de él, que es restrictivamente.
Perdona, I'm sorry. I think that we're having a little trouble with interpretation. There was a message that I think the interpreter may not be able to hear the speaker.
Estaba preguntando que si puede. Oh,
Si te
if you
puedes
could just
acercar al
go a little
micrófono.
bit less quickly and get a little bit closer to the microphone.
¿Ahí sí me escuchan? Tampoco, ok. ¿Ahí me escuchan? Un poco mejor, ok. No sé por qué no se está escuchando. Bueno, ok, está bien. Ok, ¿me escuchan ahí bien? ¿No? Yeah.
Más o menos.
Ok. Ok. Ok, encontramos una de las barreras, como ya les mencionaba, de WIOA, que es altamente restrictiva y mucho de nuevo mexicano, debido a créditos como ingresos o estatus migratorio, entre otros, existe un financiamiento estatal limitado para ellos y eso es completamente una brecha. También hemos visto cómo fortalecer el servicio de apoyo para trabajadores de bajos salarios y difíciles de alcanzar. Y una de las barreras que vimos ahí fue servicios de apoyo esenciales como el cuidado infantil, que ya mencionaba mi compañero, el transporte y transferencias de ingresos. Los suplementos de efectivo a menudo no están cubiertos por estos fondos federales, lo que limita el acceso de los trabajadores desfavorecidos y empleados de bajos salarios. Una de las recomendaciones es invertir en servicios de apoyo integral para permitir la participación en programas de educación para adultos, ampliar y financiar la difusión a través de organizaciones comunitarias para aumentar la conciencia sobre los recursos disponibles, y mejoras y acceso de sucesiones y capacidad administrativa. Ahí encontramos una barrera que permiten que las entidades locales solicitan un apoyo específico para programas de capacitación y servicios integrales. Y una de nuestras recomendaciones sería proporcionar apoyo técnico a través de la DFA para asistir a los gobiernos locales, organizaciones sin fines de lucro nuevamente y proveedores comunitarios en la solicitud de fondos federales. Esto ayudaría a la fuerza laboral, a hacer un desarrollo de nuestra fuerza laboral. También en ampliar la elegibilidad para trabajadores indocumentados. Una de las barreras que vimos ahí, los trabajadores indocumentados están excluidos de programas claves de capacitación, aprendizajes y subsidios por el gobierno, servicios de apoyo y asistencia para las matrículas en programas de certificación, créditos y no créditos como los colegios comunitarios. Una recomendación sería modificar la ley estatal para permitir que los trabajadores indocumentados accedan a la asistencia para las matrículas y tarifas de matrículas estatales. Otro sería fortalecer los programas de educación para adultos y alfabetización para mejoras. Una de las barreras que vimos ahí son los programas están insuficientemente dotados de personal, especialmente en comunidades rurales como la nuestra. Y una de las recomendaciones es el Estado debe realizar una inversión importante en la educación adulta a través del financiamiento flexible y recurrente para la División de Educación para Adultos, que es la HED.
So, we would like to just speak specifically to like a just transition for immigrant oil and gas workers. According to DWS, 55% of energy workers in New Mexico are people of color, 48% being Latinos, and 15 are women. Additionally, approximately 14% of energy workers nationwide are foreign born. Counties in the Permian Basin are majority Latino, with significant immigrant populations, creating barriers to equitable access to workforce development, skills building, and job opportunities. Over 100 oil and gas workers, families, and workforce development providers participated in a UNM Southeastern New Mexico oil and gas workforce study. The study found that industry workers face dangerous conditions, inadequate health care, early retirement with minimal benefits, and long workdays of 12 to 15 hours, limiting time for skill building, English classes, and job training that could lead to higher income and safer jobs. Notably, 78% of the oil and gas families do not want their children to work in the industry. Additionally, 95% of those surveyed indicate that they would participate in job training if offered for free at a convenient time and locations. However, 77% reported needing supplemental income to work fewer hours for training. Workforce development practitioners highlighted the need for more in-person adult education and language programs, short-term certification courses, customized training for available jobs, and improve access to online courses in rural areas, including better internet access, computers, and quiet places to complete programs.
También ampliar los programas de capacitación, como ya decía mi compañero, y servicio de apoyo. Una de las barreras que vimos fue la infraestructura actual de capacitación no abordada adecuadamente las necesidades de los trabajadores inmigrantes, especialmente aquellos que carecen de estatus legal. Y una de las recomendaciones es aumentar el acceso de programas de capacitación que sean flexibles, actualmente relevantes y acompañados de los servicios de apoyo necesario, como el cuidado de niños, transporte y suplementos de ingreso. Para transitar hacia una economía diversificada y resiliente, Nuevo México necesita invertir en el desarrollo de la fuerza laboral, especialmente para las poblaciones vulnerables. Las soluciones políticas deben priorizar a los trabajadores inmigrantes, mujeres, jóvenes y residentes rurales para crear una economía inclusiva que refleje la fortaleza de todos los nuevos mexicanos.
And thank you for hearing us.
Thank you very much. We also appreciated receiving written feedback as well from the group at Somos, so we appreciate the work and time and expertise and experience that you shared with us. Oh, and I see Patricia here. Okay. Just moved you to a panelist. There we go. Okay. Any other comments or points of feedback for us on this process? All right. Well, seeing none, I think we can probably move to adjourn a little bit early today. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Or I move to adjourn, James Bowiwa.
Is there a second?
This is
I'll
Dennis. from
second.
Emerald.
Oh, Dennis can.
No worries. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and second Breezy Gutierrez.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Seeing none, we will now adjourn this meeting of the Sustainable Economy Task Force at 2:43. Good job, everybody, on Thursday, September 26th, 2024.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.